Let's bring in Maya MacGuineas, president of the Committee for Responsible Budget. I posted this story. I'm not taking anybody's side. I don't know what's actually going on in D.C. You hear the stuff. I was there, whatever. That said, Maya, it's like we have to be intellectually honest enough to admit that the federal government is simply not a good steward of our tax dollars.
Well, sort of like you said, the low-hanging fruit of where you can find savings is getting rid of all of the fraud that you can. And this is a huge amount, hundreds of billions of dollars a year. Not entirely surprising when you're talking about a federal budget that is $7 trillion. And there is very bad coordination. There is very bad oversight. There is very bad auditing and communication between the variety of programs. So we see that there's huge inefficiencies and huge fraud, particularly, as you point out, during COVID. There are a number of programs where fraud was very, very high at that period. But yes, this is the no-brainer, right? We in D.C. can fight about anything, but this is the no-brainer that we want to squeeze all the savings out of this area first in the budget. Not going to fix the fiscal situation, but it's certainly the right place to start.
Yeah, and I don't see why. Now, maybe it's just because the way they're going about it. We talked to the Secretary of Energy. They said, listen, some of these DOGE people, they've been cleared. We know who they are. What people are going to believe what they're going to believe. But we should all agree, Maya, that sending, I don't know, $50 billion to Russian gangsters or whatever because they've infiltrated some system or created some fake unemployment, whatever it might be, all the examples that exist in real life, that $50 billion is better served going to veterans, going to teachers, going to food safety. Why has this become so political?
Going to reduce the debt? Because I have to point out that right now, one of the biggest demands on all of any savings we could find would be bringing our huge deficits and debt down. First, we know D.C. is amazingly polarized. The country's polarized. We can fight about anything. I think it's obvious that the DOGE-like effort, the effort of finding all the savings that you can and improving the efficiency of the federal government is an incredibly useful task. However, I think there's disagreements about how things are going right now and that you really want to target where your savings are. You want to take the time to evaluate and assess before you go in and kind of do across-the-board cuts. And so you want to find the specific areas of waste and you want to get rid of them. There are a couple problems. Most of these issues are in millions. And in order to get our fiscal house in order, we need to save trillions. So you're going to have to squeeze out every little bit of it. And again, we have these outdated programs where our communications between federal and state governments, different agencies, different programs is terrible. And one of, I think, the best ways that we could improve this right now is a technological overhaul, which, in fact, the DOGE folks are particularly suited to be figuring out. But if you just go back to the pandemic, we had a situation where our unemployment benefits, we couldn't even communicate between federal and state governments. So we overpaid people. Many people were making more during the pandemic than they did normally because we couldn't figure it out because our computers were so outdated. Those, again, I agree, those are no-brainers of things that we should be improving. And waste is never the best use of our dollars, for sure.
And like you said, Maya, hopefully this kind of committee, their knowledge, that would be a great thing to tackle. I mean, it's frustrating to see so much go to waste and fraud because the other areas like Medicaid are hugely controversial. That's where we've seen a really big increase in spending over the last couple of years. But the president, I want to play this clip last night, just ruled out essentially making any cuts there. Take a listen.
Social Security won't be touched. Other than if there's fraud or something, we're going to find it's going to be strengthened, but won't be touched. Medicare, Medicaid, none of that stuff is going to be touched.
Nothing.
You don't have to.
Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, he said, none of that stuff is going to be touched.
Right. So then this is where I get concerned. So I'm all in on the idea that we need DOGE-like efforts to really increase efficiencies. But where I become concerned is if it starts to take away the reality that we are actually going to have to make major programmatic changes. First, our fiscal situation is really bad. Every warning light that could be blinking is our debt, our deficits, our interest payments, our trust funds in Social Security and Medicare that are becoming insolvent. Second, no matter how much waste, fraud, and abuse we find, you cannot fix the problem without looking at these biggest programs. And if you take Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid off of the table, you have taken more than half of the budget off the table. If you add interest payments, it becomes even more difficult. And if you don't touch Social Security and Medicare, both of those programs have trust funds that are headed towards insolvency. We will see across the board provider and benefit cuts, which leaves seniors incredibly vulnerable. So that's the the wrong message completely. I think we need a much different approach. It's just leveling with the country that we can't borrow $2 trillion a year. We need to look at all parts of the budget, and we should do it as efficiently as possible, but we're going to have to make some programmatic changes. Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid have to be on the table.